Doug's Second World War newsreel cameraman, and he brought a reality. He took away the theatricality of lighting of films.
Douglas Slocombe has been cinematographer on over 100 films.
I think the brilliance of Dougie Slocombe is that is the extraordinary range of his work. I mean, if you think of it, this is a bloke who went from Ealing comedies, many of which are classic and brilliant, and suddenly ends up working with Steven Spielberg and keeps up with Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg, the fastest shooting director that you could possibly have.
I used to go and see every single film that one could. Was always spellbound by them, and always dreamt actually that one day I would be in films.
As a photojournalist, disturbing images from his assignment in Danzig just before World War II were to launch his career in moving images. He was asked to return to film Nazi activities, this time as a documentary cameraman.
I managed to get into this assembly and surprised, I think, Goebbels, who was on the stage, surprised him in mid-speech with the noise that my movie camera made. I should say that the IMO was a camera, and it made a shattering sound. And as soon as this thing started, Goebbels stopped speaking, and all the stormtroopers looked around hurriedly to see what the commotion was. And one could see that they were sort of earmarking my position so that they could sort me out afterwards, when suddenly everybody stood up and they all called out Heil Hitler. So I just got up, bent double, held my camera, and just marched underneath his outstretched arms to the exit, where I was able to beat a retreat.
After Dougie's narrow wartime escape, he joined Ealing Studios to make propaganda films. And it was there that he got his break into features.
Dougie, I think, spent something like a little short of 20 years at Ealing. And if any group, genre of British films epitomizes British cinema throughout the world, apart from David Lean, it is the Ealing movies. And Dougie made some wonderful ones.
Looking back at the Ealing days, actually, but my favorite one is it was probably Kind Hearts and Coronets. I always liked, and still do like, actually, films with sort of literary flavour, something in which one sensed good writing apart from anything else. And Kind Hearts certainly fulfilled those requirements. It was a tremendously witty script, makes me laugh to this day. There's a lot of problems, particularly with Alec Guinness playing 7 different roles. And it's probably one of the most memorable shots in, as I say, one of my favorite films.
These are just some of the highlights of Dougie's career.
First time I ever worked with him as a producer was a picture called The L-Shaped Room. And I always remember Leslie Carroll saying, "I hope to God nobody ever photographs me again other than Dougie Slocombe. I have never looked better." And Dougie, I mean, you got through a sort of forest of lamps to get to the artist. Tiny dinkies here, there and everywhere. But he was a genius at that. He was absolutely wonderful.
Director Joseph Losey asked Dougie to create the look and atmosphere for his classic film, The Servant.
One of the things that Joe Losey was known for was his love of mirrors. So whenever you deal with a mirror, of course, you have to keep all the lights and the camera equipment and so forth out of shot. And when you have a convex mirror, well, that really shows almost every corner of the scene, including the camera. So one had to do all sorts of tricks to sort of hide the camera. Katie Hepburn was my favorite actress at the time. She was a lovely person to be with and a lovely person to like. She has this wonderful bone work on her face, still there to this day, and it was a delight to light, really. Actually, I have a great admiration for Ken, although he's, as we know, a very wild character. I don't approve of all the things that he's done, I don't think, or his attitude to all the composers that he's written about and photographed. But he's, I think, a wonderful character, and I think he's actually a great filmmaker.
He did my film, The Music Lovers, Life of Tchaikovsky, and I'd asked him to do The Devils. But he was so freaked out by some scenes in Tchaikovsky of poor Glenda Jackson going totally insane in a lunatic asylum, being groped by madmen, that he turned it down. He said, Ken, I'd love to work with you again, but the cameraman has to look at the scene he's photographing, and some of your stuff is so appalling, I can't bring myself to look at it. So, regretfully, he passed on that, The Devils.
When Steven Spielberg needed second unit sequences for his film Close Encounters, he sent Dougie and his camera crew out to India.
He rang me up later on from Hollywood to say they'd seen the Russians, that they liked them very much, and that he'd promised me that we would work together.
Stephen and Dougie became a partnership, and together created the hugely successful Indiana Jones trilogy.
Stephen was very respectful of Dougie's work, and I think Dougie was excited to work with Stephen. And I think Dougie liked the fact that Stephen was challenging him all the time with different setups and different action things, and it was kind of out of the realm of the kind of movies that Dougie had done, I think, in the past. So it looked like a fresh challenge, and it made it very exciting to be there every day, to see the two of them working together. Stephen is quite difficult to keep up with. He's like a rocket. He's on the set immediately, wants to set up, doesn't even want you to get the lights off the truck practically, and wants to turn over immediately.
There were occasions actually when he would shout action while I was still setting lights, but I still nevertheless found time to put in the finishing touches, I think.
And Stephen would look up and say to Dougie, "Are you ready?" And Dougie would say, "Yes, I'm ready." And Stephen, who was quite knowledgeable of camera and lighting, would say, "Well, don't you want to check the lighting?" And he'd say, "Oh, no, we're ready." And Stephen was kind of thrown by the fact that Dougie never used the light meter.
I remember on Guns at Petoskey, which was a picture that I played in, where I played a regimental sergeant major, and Dougie Slocombe was the cameraman. And it was one of the more bizarre parts that I've ever played. This RSM was in Africa. It was the sort of picture of the image of the end of empire and so on, because it was in Africa. Dougie created an atmosphere on the set which helped me as an actor tremendously, because he really did make you believe that that light was Africa, sweating hot. And so when you're performing, if you get that feeling given to you by the cameraman, it's a tremendous asset, it's a tremendous help.
The script, of course, actually was supposed to be in hot Africa, and we had to shoot it at Pinewood on the back lot, which had to stand in for the sort of hot African plains. I think it was midwinter when we shot the film, and so I had to somehow turn grey skies and very dark grey light outside. The nearest thing I could do was to simmering hot African sunshine.
Come here!
One of my memories of that film was while I was lighting the set, one just heard actually this loud voice of Dickie's. Normally he's a quite quietly spoken person, and he'd be marching up and down behind the backings, trying out a sort of stentorian sergeant major voice.
When you pass a commission officer, you don't wave your end about pregnant penguin. You execute a salute in the following manner. Raise the right hand by the longest loop till the second finger rests 1 inch above the right eye. At the same time, turn the head in your eyes in the direction of the officer. When one face past the officer, turn the eyes to the front, your hand to the right side by the shortest route. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
John Gillerman, who was the director, and it's the first time I worked with him, he was obviously very influenced by Citizen Kane because he rather wanted to shoot as much of the film from apparently the studio floor. This meant a lot of ceilings, which made lighting more complicated, but at the same time did give a feeling of claustrophobia, I think, to the various sets. There was a documentary aspect to that film, actually, which did take me back to my war days with a sort of roaming camera. I probably instinctively gave the film some of the feeling that I had in some of the documentary footage that I'd shot.
What's miraculous about Doug, he started, in 1940s, and he's still working. In a way, he has been less heralded than he ought to have been. I mean, he's won BAFTA awards, but he's never won the Oscar. And in a way, I suppose it's probably because no Ealing film in those terms that he was involved with ever won the Oscar. And he should have it. He's entitled because he's one of the legends.